Welcome in to the WholeHog Podcast. Seth Campbell, Scotty Borderline. We are here just like the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 are here for now for football. And that's kind of the big news of the week is that the Big 12, not the Big 12, the Big 10, they just have so many names and the names.
We need some originality.
The numbers don't match how many teams are actually in their conference too, so it all just is mixed up. The Big 10 and the Pac-12 canceled. That's what I was trying to say. Their seasons have been quote-unquote moved to the spring. We'll see what happens there for some spring football, which, hey, if the SEC, ACC, Big 12 pull this off, to have football from September through, I don't know, March, April, that'd be kind of cool.
So the Pac-12's decision wiped out basketball too, right?
Yes, they're not doing anything
till at least January,
which is sad because
you
want to see people want football. Let's be honest, football is the breadwinner. Football is the most attractive sport. You're in the SEC,
but for a lot of schools, like basketball season is your escape from football season.
Exactly.
Like if your season's going down the drain, right?
Like if you're the University of Arkansas.
That's how it's been since I've been covering Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like basketball is like a reprieve from football. Like you got a little bit of reason for some excitement.
Exactly right.
Flipping the basketball season.
You want to see a very angry fan base. If this team that Musselman has doesn't get to play, there might be riots in the streets.
Yeah. I mean, I will not be happy about it, but
just got to wear that mask.
Yeah,
but
wear your damn mask.
There you go. Needless to say, as Scotty and I were talking about it, the Big 10 and the Pac-12, their decision does impact the SEC, whether or not you want it to. It does. But right now, the SEC is holding firm in the fact that they still want to play, which would mean that fall camp would start on Monday. Isn't that correct, Scotty?
On the 17th, yep.
So, football could be around the corner. And I'm just looking forward to it because it gives us something to do.
Is football back? Question mark?
Question mark indeed.
Well, we've started our preseason. We got some preseason content coming up.
Yes.
We'll get into some of that a little bit later, but I looked at the calendar yesterday. It was August 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, camp's supposed to start in 5 days. It's just kind of sneaking up on us.
That's exactly what I did.
It's crazy.
I looked at it and went, oh, no. It'll be interesting to see what happens, without a doubt, as the SEC, ACC, and Big 12 are looking at it. And, we were able to talk with somebody that is very familiar with the Big 12 program. We sat down with Deion Imade, former Oklahoma State safety, and he's a current Oklahoma State radio analyst on the Oklahoma State Radio Network. So Deion has a unique perspective, being a former athlete, being a guy that's still plugged into a university as he is right now. So without further ado, we'll just go ahead and take it over and get to Deion. We are joined now by Deion Imade. Deion, former Oklahoma State safety, and a great color analyst, may I say so myself, and also a Oklahoma State radio analyst as well. Deion, how are you doing today?
I'm good, my man. How's it going over there in SEC country?
Not too bad. We're only separated by 2 hours, but there are two different conferences, and that's been the talk of a lot of people so far in this coming week with the Big 10 and the Pac-12 canceling. A lot of eyes shifted to the Big 12 on whether or not they would cancel. They decided to move forward with the season, releasing a schedule this week. What's the vibe over there in Oklahoma about the upcoming season?
Well, from a fan's perspective, it's a sigh of relief, man. And I guess it was an interesting situation where it seemed like everybody, especially the ACC, was looking at the Big 12 and saying, hey, what are you guys going to do? Because they were the only Power 5 conference that were really keeping their cards close to their, close to their hands and to their vest and saying, well, we're going to wait until all this plays out. We're going to be the last one to decide what we're going to do. All along throughout this whole summer, you've seen the line being divided of the Big Ten and the Pac-12 saying they might not play. They're kind of hesitant on the matter. And then the SEC and the ACC were kind of pushing forward, like, we're going to play, we're going to play, we're going to play. And the Big 12 was, in the dark. They were kind of silent about the whole matter. And so when the moment came to decide what we're going to do, luckily enough for the fans and the people who love college football, the Big 12 decided, yes, we're going to play. They talked to some doctors. They talked to whoever they needed to speak to, and they got it cleared, and they announced they're going to play. And I'm guessing it was a sigh of relief for the ACC as well, because it sounded like if the Big 12 was going to play, then they were going to have to find themselves in a situation where they weren't going to be able to play either.
Deion, just looking at it from the perspective of the Big 12 did release their schedule, moving forward as a former athlete, what does that mean to you as a guy that, with all of this stuff that's going around, you've seen kind of the players with the hashtag we want to play. As a former player, what are you thinking during all of this?
I mean, that's what we're conditioned to do. I mean, think about it. Think about the psychological breakdown of an athlete, of a person who's built to play a physical sport. It's, you get bumps and bruises, you get headaches, you get pains, you deal with adversity, you push through it no matter what. That's what you're trained to do from, little league football. Your coach says, be tough, be physically tough, be mentally tough, push through it. So there shouldn't have been any surprise from individuals when you saw players on social media and speaking in the public saying that we want to play, because that's all we know. As young individuals, we know every fall we start school and we start football. We buy new cleats and we buy our school supplies. That's what happens. And so these kids are saying, hey, this is what we know, this is what we want to do, this is what we've always done. Yes, it's dangerous situations, but every time these guys touch the field, it's a dangerous situation. You're putting yourself at risk anytime you touch the field. And let's be honest, it's not about if they can or can play or willing to play or there's other players that are at risk because of, other health reasons. It's about the universities and who has the ability to play and keep these guys safe while they're in the process of getting through this season. Because these tests that they are mandated to take, it costs so much money. And the schools that don't have the money to do this, that's where the problem is. That's where the cancellations are taking place. It's, do we have the money to continue this sport in 2020?
Hey, Deion, this is Scotty Bordelon. I appreciate you hopping on with us. Just as a former athlete, would you have any reservations about playing this fall?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would definitely. I'm telling you right now, there's always going to be reservations. And when something like this, in this, global pandemic that we're looking at, I mean, why wouldn't you be concerned? There's going to be some hesitation, especially coming from mom and dad who are telling you, be careful, be safe, wash your hands. I mean, I'm not even playing anymore, and my mom and dad are calling me every other day saying, are you being safe? You wearing your mask? You washing your hands? You got hand sanitizer in your pocket? So, I mean, going out there on a football field when you're going to be in close proximity with so many individuals, of course, there's concern and there's hesitation. But again, it goes to that mindset that's been drilled into you since you've been a youngin'. Well, school's time's here, football time's here. Let's put on these pads and get after it. And that's just something that just doesn't go away. Yes, again, I say other people have concerns. Other people have, prior histories, and they have, family members and friends who have gone through serious situations with this pandemic and the COVID. So that brings other hesitations in your mind. But in my opinion, you think, you weigh your options, you see what your future looks like, and you make a decision that affects that, is best for you as an individual.
We're talking to Deion Imade, Oklahoma State radio analyst and former Oklahoma State safety. Deion, you're living in Oklahoma. in Big 12 country. What is the Big 12's perspective, or I guess just people's perspective in the place where you're living about the SEC and what they're doing and what their, I guess, regulations and rules are for the season moving forward?
Well, I mean, we all, we love to hate on the SEC over here, and it's, rightfully deserved.
Rightfully,
rightfully deserved. Hey, just because I'm on here, don't think you're not going to get the truth, all right?
Okay.
Rightfully deserved. But we, in this situation as football fans, I think it was an interesting situation to see everybody kind of band together. The people that wanted to play were like, hey, you want to play? Yeah. You want to play? Yeah. You want to play? All right, let's make a nice movement together to show the world that we want to, we're capable of it, and we can do this. And I think in this situation, it was great to see the SEC being the conference that they are, hold strong, stay together, and say, hey, football season's here, and this is what we do over here. I mean, I think a lot of people, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC kind of looked at it on a macro level and said, hey, economically wise, unfortunately, this is a situation where it would bring so much harm to our side of the country and to our states and the cities that all these universities are at. They would bring so much harm economically that we can't afford not to try. If we have the money for testing, we have to at least try. And I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but we all have to look at this situation and be realistic. I've played in a Power 5 conference. I know what goes on inside those rooms, inside those walls, inside those locker rooms, inside those weight rooms. We know as players, this is a business. It's point blank period. We know this is a business. And like Chris Tucker said in Rush Hour, follow the money. And the money is going to flow. It needs to flow. It has to flow. We understand that. As players, we know that. So in a situation where, and economically, it didn't make any sense for them not to try to play because of there'd be so much, businesses would be suffering. I mean, think about Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Mm-hmm. How much money is made from that program, not just within the athletic department, but I'm talking about around the town, around the state, just everybody, makes bread from that small little program over there in Alabama. And if they're not playing, they're going to take a phenomenal hit to their budget across the state. And I don't think they could afford to, look up and tell the people of that town that that's something that they're going to not fight for. But on the other hand, you have to understand, because this is the situation that we're in now, and because it's being said in the media, all of the board, it's obvious now. We need these players to make money. And the players know that now. And because of that, the world is going to change in not only the Big 12, not only in the Pac-12, not only in the SEC or the ACC. I'm talking about in college football in general. The players know now. We love football. We need football. We need football to make money. And they know that. And they're going to need, they're going to need a slice of the pie. They're going to deserve a slice of the pie. And that's been talked about for a long time. And now it's evident. Now it's being in your face. We need to cut these players in because they provide so much for our economy and our, life in general.
Deion, I'm not sure how much you keep up with Arkansas football, but with the SEC going to an all league schedule, what kind of a year do you think the Razorbacks are in for?
Man, honestly, with y'all having a first-year head coach, and I want to give you guys kudos big time, because what you guys are doing in the state of Oklahoma with recruiting is impressive just from the first year. The fact that y'all were able to go in Broken Arrow and grab Miles Slusher from Oregon because you just grabbed AJ Green from Union, who made a commitment here recently this summer. You guys are on a positive trajectory. I mean, just I call high school football all around the state of Oklahoma. I know the top kids, and the fact that everybody has Arkansas in their top 10, top 5 now, top 3, it says a lot about where Arkansas is going in the future. And you know, I've said this to you before, Seth, most of the time in this sport of college football and the SEC, it's not about X's and O's. It's about the Jimmies and the Joes.
Amen.
And y'all are grabbing a lot of Joes, and it's going to be interesting to see what comes of it. Now you get these kids inside your program. It's time to coach them up. You got to take those 3 stars and turn them into 4 stars and 5 stars when they finish at that program. And that's how you win, and you win big.
Talking to Deion Imade, former Oklahoma State safety, current Oklahoma State radio analyst. All right, Deion, I have a ton more questions that I would love to talk to you about, but unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go with just this one. Pertaining to Arkansas, you're a student athlete. Now, you never went through a coaching change, but you did see what it was like when you first got into campus as a freshman and trying to learn a college offense. Arkansas has yet to practice in full pads. Spring practice was canceled before, because of COVID, before they could even get any practices started. You know, the first time that the offensive coordinator saw the quarterback, Philippe Franks, former Florida quarterback, throw the ball was 2 weeks ago. I guess the first time in person he saw. How difficult is it going to be for these guys to pick up a completely new offense, a completely new defense, because they haven't been out there on the field?
Here's the thing, and to correct you a little bit.
Okay.
I've been through coaching changes. I've been through defensive coordinators switching, and people don't know this often, but there's a coaching change every year inside a program at a Division I school. Those positions, people get up and leave and go to different jobs and go to bigger opportunities. I mean, you know, position coaches become coordinators at different universities. Every year, somebody's coming and going, especially if your team is good. If your team is good, they're going to find ways to get inside and you know, pick the people out that have made your team successful. So every year there was somebody leaving or coming and going in our university. And the thing about that is you have to be able to be a type of player who's adaptable to different situations. And that's not just on the football field, that's in life. Things are going to change. You have to be able to adapt. Now, as far as the X's and the O's goes, it's going to be interesting. That's the reason you recruit smart players. The old days of you think these guys are jocks and they don't pay attention to what's going on and they just see ball, get ball, and run fast, throw long, you know, catch it. And that's not the way it is anymore. You got to be a very, you know, heady player, football smart. You got to be able to move forward because things change quickly. And so with the new coaching staff and the players that are coming in or trying to learn the system, hey, you're going to find out who's the smart guys on your team, who can be trusted, who can play. And in football, things are always a little bit of a variation of one thing or another. So hopefully it's a situation where some of the plays or some of the schemes are similar to the coaching staff, and these guys just have to, you know, learn and adapt and you know, just recognize what the terminology is of the new plays from the old plays. And, you know, coaches they're paid a lot of money so they can make this transition easier for the players. And the players that can adapt will rise, and the ones that can't figure it out, you know, obviously they won't be able to get on the field. And it's on you to do your homework at night and make sure that you're up to speed on what's going on.
All right, Deion, thanks so much for joining us. As I said, it's Deion Imade, former Oklahoma State safety, Oklahoma State radio analyst. Deion, thanks for the insight.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you, Seth. Thanks for having me, man.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today, WholeHogSports.com.
Welcome back into the Whole Hog Podcast. Once again, big thanks to Deion Imade for joining us. He had a pretty unique perspective on the entire thing, Scotty.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to him, and sometimes with athletes, like when I asked him if he would have any reservations about playing, I kind of thought that he might say no, like football's what I know, football's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But just these he's taking everything into consideration. Like, of course you want to play football, but you want, like, your safety is like on top of the possibilities of getting injured on the field. He's taking into account kind of the unknown right now, and I kind of expected him to say he would be all for playing, but I mean, it's not just cut and dry. I don't think
It's really not.
it's really not, and just some pretty unique perspective from him. That was a good get by you. I thought it was interesting what he said about all the players in college football programs, especially Power 5 programs, know that it's a business, and it's just like the kids just kind of more or less fall in line, right?
Yep.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
It's a good perspective from, he's only 2 hours away in Tulsa, but he's got a completely different perspective, even calling the SEC. I don't want to say evil, but he's like, we know what goes on over there. So just a unique perspective to add to the Whole Hog Podcast. So we really appreciate Deion. All right, Scotty, you mentioned it a little earlier. We've got some preseason football stuff to get into. We're going to have a Razorback roundtable. But on top of that, we've got some great stories. One from Matt Jones about Hudson Henry. You wrote something about Monteric Brown. We have our random school of the week. Don't forget about that. Basketball got some commitments, or got a commitment, I should say, out of the Down Under. That was my best accent. We're not going to do that again.
You tried.
And then also we got a track and field story to throw in there as well. Just mixing it up here on the Whole Hog Podcast.
I read it last night. It was a pretty interesting story. I think you're going to want to read it. It's far from the norm. Yeah. I would say that kid's journey.
That it is wild. But let's start with the preseason. I don't want to call them picks, but preseason questions. We did this last year. I've only been here. It's kind of weird to say, but I've been here for a year now, Scotty.
Yeah.
And we did these last year. I've really thought they were really interesting, and it's a good topic of conversation for everybody on the Whole Hog Sports board as well and on the forum. So if you're not on there, make sure to go check that out. But we started with quarterbacks. So we're assessing Arkansas's quarterbacking options. What stood out to you? Because we had Tom Murphy, Clay Henry, Bob Holt, you and me on these questions. What stood out to you as, I don't know, some of the big questions that these guys answered or brought up?
Yeah, so the first question in this is, what's the number one trait that Philippe Franks brings to Arkansas's quarterback room? And overwhelmingly, it was his experience, right? Like, he's started and had success at the SEC level, at the national level. Like, he won a New Year's Six bowl game, right, with Florida. He's been there. He's done it. He's played in some really big games. He's played well in some big games. He's had a great season. I think it was his 2018 season was pretty good. I don't think he threw for 3,000 yards, but his touchdown to interception ratio was pretty good. Solid completion percentage. I think the big thing that Philippe brings to the quarterback room that Arkansas hasn't really had. And I wouldn't say that Ben Hicks and Nick Starkel were not poised and confident, but it just seems different.
It does.
It's different. Like,
Well,
and I think his poise and his confidence comes from a real place, like having been in the league, having been in the SEC before, a big time program, national program. Whereas, not to like slander Nick Starkel and Ben Hicks, but like Ben Hicks's confidence and his success came at SMU, and Nick Starkel's came from
6 games at
throwing
TM.
for 500 yards against Wake Forest in a bowl game that not a whole lot of people were like really you know what I mean? Like, it just, his poise and his moxie and his confidence just comes from a different place.
For sure.
For me. And so I think this transfer quarterback doesn't feel like the others to me. And I talked to Philippe, I think it was in about mid-June, talked to him for that Glory Days story about his baseball career, and he sounded like a vet, like he'd done a million interviews before, just supremely confident but not over the top with it. And so I just think guys are going to gravitate to him, and good poise, confident, big arm. You know, he can hurt you with his feet too. What did you think?
I basically just put down experience as I'm looking at the answers. Mine was definitely the shortest, but there's just no substitute for experience, and that's basically what all of those guys said. Is what he brings to the table as a quarterback this year is, bar none, the most important thing that he can have for this quarterback room. Obviously it helps that he has a good arm, can read defenses, understands the offense. All that stuff will help without a doubt. But the reason why he has SEC experience is because he has all of those things. He wouldn't have been a starting quarterback at Florida if he didn't have those things. So I think that all of that together is the big reason why Felipe Franks, why I get it. The coaches don't want to name him the starter yet because basically they haven't seen anything. But Felipe Franks will run out there as a starter. You didn't bring this guy in here. You didn't come to paint with this guy.
Right.
You didn't bring this guy in here to sit on the bench and look pretty. And there is no quarterback controversy going into the season this year. But speaking of quarterback controversy, or their lack thereof, a guy that's sitting behind Franks right now is KJ Jefferson. And you said it's difficult. The question, I guess, that was posed is, you said it's difficult since the Razorbacks didn't have spring practices, but what do you see for KJ Jefferson this fall?
I said it's kind of tough to say, and I think it kind of is, but just because we think Felipe, like you said, he didn't come here to paint, right? Yeah. So, like, he's the odds-on favorite, right, to the projected starter. So you're like, where does that leave KJ? And you would think, well, if Felipe grabs a hold of the job, then that means that KJ's not going to get much run, right?
Right.
So then what? Like, you would think maybe Kendall Briles put some stuff, maybe some packages, puts him in some various scenarios. You know, maybe you can try to expand his option game, like his read option game, continue to work with them, you know, with his precision in terms of passing the ball. I just think it's going to largely depend on if Felipe is as good as we think he's going to be. Otherwise, you know, I mean, if the only way I see KJ really having like a huge role in this team is just if Felipe just doesn't work out, which I don't think that's gonna be the case.
He's a good safety to have behind Felipe after Felipe's broken leg. You never know if that could happen again. I get that. I think the role for KJ this year is going to be the backup role. Whether or not he embraces that, so I'm going to just go ahead and go back on what I just said. I hate the word embracing the backup role. Yes, you need to embrace it in a way, but you also...
You have to be ready. You have to be prepared, just like you are the starter.
But you don't want guys to be content. If you have a guy that's a backup that's content being a backup, then that's not the guy that you have that can't be your guy moving forward, I think, in a way.
If you got a guy who's content being the backup, he's probably not going to be your backup.
Yeah.
Or he shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You want a guy there that's constantly pushing Philippe. You want a guy that's constantly trying to get better. So when Philippe leaves, there's going to be questions at quarterback next year, without a doubt. But is KJ going to be the guy that can step up and fill those holes? I think this season can really determine that. KJ has an opportunity to get in the weight room, get in the playbook, learn Kendall Briles' offense. Because let's be honest, Kendall Briles is probably going to be back here next year, especially with whatever is going on. It doesn't look like a lot of people are going to leave. So you can have the experience to when spring practices start next year or whenever you can get out on the field next year, you can have that guy leading the pack. He passes the eye test without a doubt.
Yeah.
Now it's just the intangibles. Can he get those? And can he move forward with those? And this is also a great time if he really embraces this role. As I said, I hate that word, but also if he knows that he's going to be the backup this year and is trying to get better, he can learn from Philippe Franks.
Sure.
Why not pick a guy that has been to a New Year's Six Bowl, that has played at the elite of the elite, under an elite coach with an elite offense? We've seen him have an offense that has won multiple guys Heismans. Or at least he won Tim Tebow. Did Dak Prescott win the Heisman?
No, he did not.
Okay, but he's coached Dak, that is an NFL quarterback. He's coached a Heisman winner in Tim Tebow. So Dan Mullen knows what he's doing with quarterbacks. So
he's doing it right now with Kyle Trask.
So you can learn from Philippe Franks that's learning from that guy and then also from Kendall Briles. This is a great opportunity for KJ. He just doesn't need to blow it, in other words. And I don't think, from what we have seen from KJ, I don't think he will.
Yeah.
He hasn't shown any experience.
Nothing makes me think that he's going to blow it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But also I think that this, moving forward, what we said multiple times is this is Philippe Franks' team right now.
Yeah. And we saw, like, when KJ got into games last year, you could see that he's got it, but it needs a lot of polish. It needs to be refined more. And I think just working with Kendall Briles is going to be really big. And I think Kendall will probably put in some packages for him that kind of suit his strengths.
That's what I was curious about. Yeah.
And so the first thing that came to my mind was when Arkansas played Mississippi State at home last season. KJ gets in toward the end of the game. He throws a bomb down the field to Traylon Burks, I think. And then the next snap, KJ's barreling into the end zone from 5 or 6 yards out, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's, maybe if you want to protect the health of Philippe maybe a little bit, maybe I'm way out there on this, but maybe he's like your goal line quarterback, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
You said he passes the eye test. The first time we saw him at practice last year, it was stunning. The dude is he's built just as a freshmen don't look like that.
Right.
At quarterback. So, he's definitely got it. He needs some work, and I will give him credit. Sam Pittman said that he's liked what he's seen from KJ in terms of picking up the offense and knowing where to go with the football, and that's encouraging.
My only thing, I want him to have special formations. I want them to be able to utilize him. If you have a threat like that, why would you not use it? The only thing I
think you got to keep him engaged.
Yeah. I don't know. I've tried to go back and watch a lot of Kendall Briles' offense when he was at Houston, when he was at Florida State. YouTube is a great thing. And you can go back and watch those things. Briles didn't use a lot of secondary quarterbacks, but that could very well be because he didn't have one. If you think about what he had at Florida State and what he had at Houston, I'm trying to remember the quarterback's name at Houston. He had a really good quarterback, but there's not saying that the guy behind him was that good. So I think that Briles and Pittman and the entire offense will be able to utilize him in some way.
Surely.
What that is,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you.
And then the last question you asked here, as we wrap it up on the roundtable portion here of the WholeHog Podcast, there's another guy waiting in the wings in the quarterback room. There was a big get on signing day, and Malik Hornsby. Do you see any scenario where he challenges for the backup job?
I think he can just because he's super talented, right? But him not, I don't think, I certainly think he can. I don't expect him to be the backup. I think that's KJ's job. No doubt in my mind, Malik is going to be a terrific talent, and he may very well, take the quarterback job after this season. I mean, I think as of right now, looking at 2021, I mean, it's going to be KJ. You would think if KJ sticks around and Malik, if Malik sticks around, like those are the two guys that are going to be battling for the starting job next season. That's a legit battle, I think. I don't think Malik's year is this year. Maybe you can get him some experience. Maybe if games get out of hand, maybe you can stick him in there and get some experience. Like any experience that he gets, it's not like you're throwing him out there late in the game. Say you're hypothetically blowing out Portland State, which wouldn't happen. But like you're not just throwing him in there against some no-name team, like, and getting him experience that way. Like if he gets on the field next season, I mean, it's going to be against like a real team. You know what I mean? So that's valuable in itself. I think KJ's got like the number 2 spot locked up right now. I'm excited about Malik's potential for sure. I think it's going to take Malik maybe some time to grasp the offense firmly as the coaches want and kind of settle into college ball.
All right. Well, look forward. I'll put the link in the description if you want to check out the article from Scotty, me, Clay Henry, Bob Holt, and Tom Murphy about all of our answers to those questions. And then keep looking forward and checking back on WholeHogSports.com because there's going to be multiple positions on the offensive side of the ball before the defensive side of the ball comes in as well. We're just kind of getting you primed. We're getting primed as well for the season as fall camp will start on Monday the 17th. Matt Jones wrote an interesting story this week about a football player in Hudson Henry, who I like how he led off the story. Hudson Henry doesn't like to lose, and he doesn't lose very often.
He's not used to it.
Nope. And he's uniquely situated in a position where he plays the same position as his brother, who was very, very good going forward or previous to him. You're not the starting quarterback. You're not the starting tight end for the Los Angeles Chargers if you're bad.
Right.
So he's going to constantly be being compared to his brother, and that can be sometimes a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And just coming to Arkansas from Pulaski Academy, where Matt wrote in his story, he said he's kind of loosely defined as a tight end. Like he was split out more often than not, I feel like, at PA. But just the learning curve, and then the learning curve of picking up an offense as a true freshman and, probably needing to bulk up a little bit. And I think he has done that. If you look at Arkansas's updated football roster, but you couple like the learning curve with, I think he was in concussion protocol in fall camp last year. And so that kind of set him back even more. And he played in like 3 games last year, I think. So he got on the field much later than expected.
Right.
But now, I mean, Shine O'Grady's gone, and Grayson Gunter's gone. Now it's like Hudson is the guy in the tight ends room, and I was just looking at Arkansas's tight ends on the roster. I'll read them off to you. See if you can recognize any of them. Nathan Bax.
No.
Colin Sutherland, true freshman.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've heard of these guys, but yeah.
Blake Kern.
Yeah, I've heard of Blake Kern because he's
heard of Blake Kern, but it's not been because you've heard his name
on the
through the PA after he caught a pass, because he hasn't caught one yet.
No.
And
I noticed that when, spoiler alert, we did the entire offense at once. And so I was looking up the tight ends. I noticed that Kern has played in a decent amount of games and not caught a pass.
Right. And then your last guy in that group is is Jonas Hixson, who I know that name just from kind of keeping up with high school football in the area. He's from Bentonville West, and then it's Hudson Henry. And so, I mean, it's Hudson Henry, and then maybe you can get something from Blake Kern, but I don't know that you can count on that happening because it hasn't happened yet. And then maybe does Colin Sutherland jump in? Is he maybe a guy that it can give you some time as a freshman? I mean, it's kind of up in the air right now. I think they're just looking at Hudson Henry as a redshirt freshman to lead a position group. Like that's a tough position to be put in, but he's got greatness runs in that bloodline, right?
Right.
So I'm expecting I don't know, I expect like a huge season from him, but he's I think he'll hold his own for sure.
I think so too. It's like you said, it's a tough position to be a redshirt freshman and be a leader in a group. But if there's anybody that you feel like that could do it, you feel like it's him. Also, you wrote a story this week, Scotty, about Monteric Brown. What did you? I'm just gonna serve it up to you and let you take it wherever you want. What did you learn about Monteric?
If you've watched any interviews of Monteric Brown when he's come into the interview room in the basement of the Fred Smith Center,
which we're not going to be able to do this year,
right? He's like Monteric Brown. You could probably say he's a pretty shy, quiet guy, and now he's kind of assuming a leadership role in the secondary. And I think he's finding his voice. He's coming back from a sports hernia. He said, I asked him how that injury happened, and he said he turned his hips to run, or he flipped his hips to run with the Colorado State receiver last fall, and he felt something pop, and his cousin Ladarius Bishop came in for him. Ladarius Bishop ended up having one of the bigger plays in that game in the second half because Monteric was out. He had this 25-yard scoop and score.
Mm-hmm.
And so Monteric I don't think he played the next week against San Jose State. He came back for the A&M game and picked off his first pass in the end zone. Had his family there. Picked off a Kellen Mond pass in the end zone. He said that was just a moment that he'll never forget. Like, first pick comes in AT&T Stadium, like cool. An NFL stadium. That's pretty remarkable. He's pretty confident in what he can do. He says he thinks he can shut down an entire side of the field. So maybe we'll wait and see on that one. But prides himself on being a physical corner. I think he's one of the better open field tacklers in terms of defensive backs Arkansas's had like in a while. And there's several cases of it. Like, I remember being at Kentucky, like he took down Lynn Bowden in the open field several times last year. So it's like Lynn Bowden's he's a slippery dude. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Buster can do if Arkansas does play a season. I think he could have a breakout year. I think he's a top 5 breakout candidate.
All right, Scotty. Well, that kind of wraps up the football talk that we got going on for today, unless you have anything else to add.
No, I'm good.
So it's time for everybody's favorite part of the podcast. It's the random school of the week.
It's the make Scotty sound like an idiot segment.
That is not why we do this. This is education, because if the football writer, basketball writer, baseball writer, Scotty Borderline doesn't know, then maybe other people don't know. And we want you to come away from the WholeHog Podcast feeling smarter. So, Scotty, there is a team that competes in the WAC.
Okay.
First of all, how many members does the WAC have now?
I have no idea. I'm going to guess 10 or 12.
They have 9.
9.
I just have a hard time with this because I'm not going to give it away. We'll talk about this afterwards. But this school, as I was saying, competes in the WAC, and their mascot is a cougar. They are green as their main color, and I'm not sure that you have really ever even heard of this school.
Great. There you go. You say you don't put this segment in the podcast every week to make me sound like an idiot. Yeah, here we are.
So they're located in Illinois.
Green Cougars in Illinois.
Mm-hmm. They're located in Chicago. I honestly didn't know this was a team, so this is why I brought it up. Because we're educating Scotty.
Oh
I'm trying to think of famous alumni or anything, and like Wikipedia is not even helping me out here.
Chicago State.
Yes. Chicago State Cougars.
Don't look at my laptop screen.
He's cheating.
I've not heard of
half
of these schools.
You're looking at the WAC, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I have qualms with the Western Athletic Conference having a team east of the Mississippi. I have qualms with that.
Yeah.
That
doesn't make any sense.
You can't be in Illinois and be in the WAC. These teams can't make
Chicago State and Cal Baptist, same league.
Yeah, how are you in Chicago in what is that? Riverside, California. And you got to think that these teams don't make a ton of money, so that travel, just think for all of their sports. I mean, besides football, if you got to go for the volleyball game, for a soccer game, that's kind of ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, so the big member of the WAC used to be the most famous member, I would guess.
Oh, Gonzaga?
Gonzaga was in the WAC?
No?
They're in the West Coast Conference.
Yeah, the WCC. Maybe I thought they were in the WAC at one point.
They honestly could have been. I was thinking football playing member that is not in the WAC anymore. They are in the Mountain West.
Oh, Boise State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got blue turds.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of.
They were the most famous for a while, but so you've got Seattle University, Utah Valley, CSU Bakersfield, California Baptist, Grand Canyon. Now I knew Grand Canyon because they played Arkansas in baseball. New Mexico State, UT Rio Grande Valley, the UMKC Roos, and Chicago State. Oh, and their headquarters is in Denver. I don't know why.
Sure, that's kind of central, I guess.
But there's no team from Colorado in the WAC. Anyway.
Who says it needs to make sense?
Conference realignment screwed up a lot of things. But yeah, no, I'm surprised that the Western Athletic Conference is still alive. What do you think? Like the biggest name team in there is New Mexico State?
Yeah, probably.
And how's New Mexico State and New Mexico not in the same conference? I figured they would just... Anyway, I digress. Well, that is the random school of the week brought to you by cancellations because the WAC just announced that they're not going to have fall sports. And that's how I kind of came up with that idea. But anyway, moving on, Scotty, we've got just a few more things to touch on as the basketball podcast of Mid-America before it wraps up. And one of them is Eric Musselman and David Patrick and the Arkansas basketball crew. David Patrick used his down under ties and brought home a Razorback from Australia.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess committed. He didn't bring him home yet.
How do you say his name? Akol Maywin? Is that what we're going to go with?
I have not talked to him, but I went with Akol Maywin.
Yeah, so I think we're on the same page. 6'10", 220 from Navarro College in Texas. Has known David Patrick for a long time. You know, I'm looking at Richard's story, and Maywin said that Patrick has looked out for him like all those years. They've built a relationship, and he's just a great person. And one of the other things that I found that was really interesting, just kind of getting to know his story more, that Maywin and his family moved from Sudan to Egypt and then to Australia before they came to the United States. So that kid has done his fair share of traveling already, even at a pretty young age.
You're definitely using the connections, and it just realized it was a realization to me that college sports in general, especially high power, Power 5, we'll call them Division 1 sports, they are international now, without a doubt.
Yeah.
You find kids wherever. In the story that I wrote about Edamar, the track and field pole vaulter that we'll get to here in a second, it just makes you realize that if you can find the best talent in the Sudan, in Australia, in Egypt, you go and you find it. And kudos to Musselman and his staff. They add that commit, 8 calls to commit to Chance Moore from Georgia. And they're building a monster, and you just hope and pray that they can play this year.
Yeah. And one of the things, just looking at Maywin's highlight reel, like he's 6'10", but big guard. Like what I saw in his highlight videos was that kid is something else in the open floor. Like he's got a pretty good handle and finishes pretty well. I mean, jump shot might come along a little bit when he gets to college, but his college head coach says he's extremely versatile, and so versatile at 6'10".
That's nice.
That's pretty scary. They're putting together. Arkansas is putting together something pretty scary. But yeah, one of the things that definitely stood out was that it's like 6'10" kids aren't supposed to like look that natural with the ball in their hands in transition, going downhill. Just
the game is evolving.
Yeah, no joke.
Without a doubt, the game is evolving right before our eyes. The NBA is shooting more threes, and everybody's taking notice because, get this, Scotty, 3 points are worth more than 2.
Brain blast.
Boom. All right, well, that's going to just about wrap us up. Oh, almost forgot about Edamar. By the way, you can look at all of these stories. There's links in the description. Make sure to go to the description of wherever you are listening to this, and there will be links to the podcast. Or not to the podcast, to the stories that we were talking about.
Yeah, tell me about just how you found out about this guy's story and what was like the most interesting thing that you found out about him?
Well, let's see. I hit a low point in trying to figure out new story ideas, Scotty.
Dude, I'm right there with you.
I went through the track and field roster, and I was like, nobody's really written about track and field, and just clicked on their profiles and went through and saw what popped up. And most of the time they have their stats and whatnot, and then they have a little personal section. And in Edamar's, so Edamar, I'm going to say his name once, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize. It is Edamar Bostikar, I think, but everybody calls him E.T., so from now on, we'll call him E.T.
There you go.
So E.T., or I'll call him Edamar because that's what I did during the entire interview. He listed in his profile in his personal section on the Arkansas track and field roster was that he served in the Israeli military. And that stood out to me because, first of all, he's not from here and he's already served in the militaries. And I'm like, I got to reach out. So I reached out and talked to Edamar, and I mean, where do I begin? This guy, let's see. He leads off the interview, and I was like, well, what have you been doing during coronavirus? He goes, oh, I've been teaching kids. What? And he goes, yeah, I went to an underprivileged boarding school. He said that this boarding school is for kids that their parents really didn't do a whole lot for them. And so they have a really hard time learning. He goes, and I taught him about the French Revolution. He goes, I was bored. We couldn't go anywhere in Israel during the coronavirus. I was stuck over there in Israel. And so I just started teaching kids. It's like, that's amazing. And so he was basically born in one town, but lived in a town of about, he said, 3,000 people. So it's a small desert town. It was an Air Force town for the Israeli military. And everybody is required to go to the military in Israel, with, I think, a few exceptions. I tried to look them all up, and it got complicated quick.
I'm sure.
But he goes, and there's a professional team in Israel. So soccer is the most famous, the most popular sport.
Sure.
in Israel. But he said the second most popular is basketball. And so there's a team called Maccabi Tel Aviv.
Yeah, I think Sonny Weems has played for them before.
I think you're right. And they are located in Tel Aviv in Israel. And they set up these camps where they'll get kids to play basketball so that they start learning basketball and start getting interested in basketball. And that way, if they ever develop into a legit talent, they'll bring them over to Tel Aviv and say, all right, you're going to start practicing here. So whenever you get of age, you can come and be on our team. It's not like in the United States where basically colleges serve as a minor league team for all of the pros right now. They needed to find these guys to see. So they started a club in Edamar's hometown. Well, when he's 13, he'd been playing for a while. Well, when he's 13, they call him, his parents got divorced and he ended up going to Tel Aviv, and they were like, well, you need to join the team. You're good. And so he starts joining the team. He's in there for 1 week, and the coach goes, hey, we're going to send you to a track and field coach so you can get faster. The track and field coach sees him and goes, hey, I'm going to send you to this pole vaulting coach. And Edamar's like, I don't know what pole vaulting is. He said, I did it for a week, and I really liked it. So then he starts doing pole vaulting. He said in the story, I don't want to give it all away, but he said that he had to make a decision. He had wanted to be a basketball player for 10 years, just found pole vaulting for 1 week, and he had to make a decision right then and there what he wanted to do. And he said, I just went with my gut. And
that is insane. Pole vaulting is not just something you pick up and decide that you're good at.
Right? Dude's a freak athlete. But so long story short, he does pole vaulting. I really encourage you to read the stories. There's a lot of details in there, but he travels all around the world. He has to serve in the military. His athletics kind of get involved with his military service a little bit. He had to decide whether or not he wanted to stick with the military service or become an athlete. And then finally he decides he wants to go to America. So he's applying all over, and he goes, I really had no idea what the recruiting process was like. I just sent my tapes and a resume to anybody I thought would want to see it. And he says, so he got a few answers back, decided to go to UTEP. And one of the funniest parts of the story is Edmar goes, well, I went to Texas UTEP, which is Texas El Paso. So I'm in El Paso the first day. I wake up, and I'm not really familiar with anything. And he goes, well, I need to eat breakfast. And he goes, well, I don't know anything. I know McDonald's. So I walk outside, and I ask a lady, where's McDonald's? So I can just go for the first day. And she didn't speak English. She was talking to him in Spanish. And he goes, what? He goes, I didn't realize. He goes, I just thought in America everybody spoke English. Mm-hmm. Just being from so far away. And he goes, and it just exposed me to more cultures and made me realize that just because you're in America, that doesn't mean, because America has all these different cultures in it as well, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to speak English. And he said that was actually really cool. He likes Mexican food. I asked him what his favorite American.
El Paso's got plenty of good stuff there.
I asked him what his favorite American food was, and he said, I don't know what American food is. And I was like, that's actually a very good point that nobody can tell you. But he's going to compete in the heptathlon, which is a 7-event series competition. Thank you. That's the right word that I was looking for. It's a 7-event competition. He's also going to be a pole vaulter. They're looking for him to be one of the better pole vaulters this year. So it's really interesting to talk to Edamar. Just a completely different perspective.
Yeah, I enjoyed editing that story, and I definitely encourage y'all to go read it. The depth in that story was fantastic. That was an awesome read.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Scotty, and we appreciate you for listening to the WholeHog Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure to like it. Make sure to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button wherever you are listening to this right now. And don't forget to tell your friends, football season is coming right now. And so the podcast doesn't slow down. It hasn't slowed down all pandemic. I mean, surprisingly enough, we've been able to keep up with it.
We've been in here, every week except
3 maybe?
Yeah, 3 weeks. Because I know me and you were on vacation in July. I was out too. But other than that, I mean, it's been consistent. It's going to pick up. Like as long as football season keeps going, like this will keep going.
Yes,
absolutely.
We'll have
something a little bit more concrete to talk about for sure.
Yeah, if you listen to the podcast last year, we had interviews. Those will still continue. We'll also have the roundtables, getting to talk to Tom Murphy, Bob Holt, Matt Jones, Dudley Dawson, all those guys. When football season starts to get close, we can figure all of that out. And you'll get to have great insight into Razorback sports. But like I said, if you liked it, share with your friends because we're just going to keep on getting bigger. All right. Well, for Scotty Bordelon and our entire WholeHogSports.com crew, I am Seth Campbell saying so long, and we'll see you back here next week.